Today we have a slightly unusual format. I recently saw a post on the SMITE Pro League website with advice on how to play and build Baba Yaga by the pro players. And I thought that would be an interesting article to actually just read out to you guys. I read it myself and thought it was interesting, added some new information, especially in light of the upcoming buffs to Baba Yaga as well. And as such, that's what we're doing today. My apologies in advance for the lag in the background footage. HiRez servers have this weird glitch where they kick OCE players onto other servers at the moment, and then it just causes these massive ping delay issues. At least everyone was playing on it. Now let's get into the article. SMITE Pro Tips: How to build and play Baba Yaga. SMITE's most recent patch introduced a brand new goddess from the Slavic pantheon, the Witch of the Woods herself, Baba Yaga. This goddess brings some unique RNG elements that we haven't seen on past mages, and a passive mechanic that sees her house roam around the map with her. The randomness in Baba Yaga's kit can make her fairly difficult to master. But luckily for you, we've enlisted some pro players to help you make sense of Baba Yaga's abilities and how you can best leverage her on the battleground. If you want to try your hand at piloting this wily witch in your next Smite game, Sheento, Paul and Nika are here with some tips to guide your way. In this guide, we'll go over some of their pro advice on how to build and play Baba Yaga in update 7.4 and what you need to be focusing on when you bring this chaotic homebody to the battlefield. How to play Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga is not your typical mage. Her kit boasts tons of RNG elements that might throw a player for a loop if they're not prepared. She's also a bit slower to fire abilities than other mages, but she's got strong damage and an element of unpredictability that might give you just the edge you need to secure victory. Positioning and rotation. Like most mages, Baba Yaga is meant to be played from the backline. Keep a healthy distance between yourself and the enemy, then wait for one of your teammates to engage before committing to going in. What Baba lacks in CC and setup potential, she makes up for in damage and buffs and debuffs. So your best bet is to hang back, let your allies do some setup, then debuff and damage your enemy target so that they can't stay in the fight. Because Baba doesn't have a ton of CC and her escape is slower than most mages, you'll want to choose your rotations very carefully and make sure you don't end up in a situation where you're facing multiple enemies with no allies nearby and no CC in sight to help you out. Whenever possible, rotate with your team so that you have some extra setup for your damage and aren't as vulnerable to enemy attacks. If you're looking to take Baba into Conquest, our pros agree that she's best in the mid-role. Even if she can't clear as efficiently as other mages, she's still able to stack items fairly easily thanks to her passive. Nika says she is playable in solo as well, just be aware that she'll be pretty weak in lane, then will become very impactful mid to late game as she comes online. There are some players out there taking Baba Yaga into the support role thanks so easily she can stack items like Guardian's Blessing or Gauntlet of Thieves, but Paul doesn't really think this is an effective strategy, mostly due to a lack of CC. Ability combos and leveling. The RNG in Baba Yaga's kit and the slower fire times on some of her abilities means that you might need to switch up your usual mage strategy if you want to play her well. It may take a bit more time to get used to the randomness in her kit and learn how to combo it effectively, but all pros agree that patience is key to playing Baba Yaga. Baba's first ability, Wild Witchcraft, is a damaging ability that fires in a random shape and can also apply various buff and debuff effects that might boost ally protections, boost ally movement speed, reduce enemy movement, or silence enemies altogether. This will be your primary damage and poke ability. Paul says Wild Witchcraft is pretty simple to master so long as you pay close attention. Check your passive bar before you fire so you know what your shape is going to be and what effect it will apply. Then you can be more strategic in how you use your shape instead of just firing at random. Paul has seen too many Baba players fire without thinking, only for the oval shape to appear and completely miss the time. And remember, your opponents won't be able to predict what shape or effect is coming until it's already hit them, so use that to your advantage as much as possible. Baba's next ability has her brewing random consumables that apply a number of different effects. Based on what ingredients go into Baba's brew, which are indicated around the bottle she holds while casting, the potion will apply a mix of damage, enemy slow debuffs, enemy attack speed debuffs, and enemy power debuffs. After mixing her ingredients, Baba can throw the potion or store a single potion in one of her consumable slots. Nika advises paying close attention to the ingredients you're brewing each time you cast, because the combination you have will change how you approach a fight in a number of ways, be that backline protection or poking and diving the enemy team. Paul recommends trying to keep one of Baba's brews stored in your consumable slot at all times, so you can throw 2 brews during a fight and double down on damage and debuffs. Sheento seconds this recommendation, saying that throwing a double potion and then following up with your wild witchcraft damage is a great way to poke your enemy. Baba's third ability, Blast Off, is an escape tool that provides damage mitigation, knockout protection, and explosive magic that will launch Baba in the direction she is facing and deal damage to those left in her mortar's path. Timing this ability correctly to maximize your damage mitigation might make the difference between death and escape in a teamfight. Sheento recommends saving this ability for when a frontline tank tries to get the jump on you, and Paul adds that you should pop it right before you get nuked with a damaging ability. It's not advised to try and use this ability aggressively, as you'll be very vulnerable once Blast Off is on cooldown. When Baba Yaga uses her ultimate, her cabin comes crashing onto the battlefield and knocks enemies away. Using the house as a shield, Baba Yaga tosses out witchfire bolts that deal AoE damage on impact, then chase the enemy and continue dealing burn damage as long as they're caught in the flames. This ultimate can be incredibly useful in teamfights, but both are pros warn that you need to exercise caution when using it. Baba's ult is very slow to cast, much slower than other mages you may be used to. So keep this in mind when you're trying to hit your witchfire bolts. Paul says to aim where the enemy is running, not where they currently are. Quick note on this one, this will slightly change with the upcoming patch because the projectile speed of these things. So once the update hits for this, then you may want to re-practice aiming the fireballs differently. On the defensive side of things, Sheento warns players not to panic and automatically use this ult to escape danger. Because it is slow to cast, you might end up dead before you can even finish your firing animation. And even when you're shielded by your cabin, you're now a much larger and slower moving target, so it'll be easier for damaging abilities to hit you and burn through those defenses. While in some cases, you might be able to use your ultimate as part of a tactical retreat that keeps the enemy from continuing to chase you, it's not going to be effective if you need a really immediate escape. That's why it's essential to make sure you don't waste Blast Off. Last but not least, make sure you don't let your size in Baba Yaga's ultimate give you a false sense of confidence about how well you can frontline. Your house might protect you for a little while, but you need to stay on the backline to make sure you can still get away safely if things go wrong. In most cases, your leveling order will see you take Wild Witchcraft at level 1, followed by Baba's Brew at level 2 and Blast Off at level 3. From then on, your leveling priority will be Home Sweet Home, Wild Witchcraft, Baba's Brew, Blast Off. How to build Yaga. Now that you've mastered the chaos and learned how to position yourself on Baba Yaga and use your random abilities to your advantage, it's time to make sure that you're building her properly. She might be classed as a mage, but Baba could function well as a solo with the right build path. Whatever you do, don't be afraid of stacking items. Your passive will make sure you get those stacks maxed out regardless of how well you farm. Ability-based mage build. If you're looking to play Baba as a standard mage, Sheento recommends 2 builds that might work for you. For the most part, these builds are the same, but your starting items will make a big difference between them. To maximize your mana and MP5, you'll want to get Book of Thoth as your starting item and then follow this build path. Book of Thoth, Shoes of Focus, Divine Ruin, Soul Reaver, Charon's Coin, Obsidian Shard. If you'd rather forego the mana to magical power conversion and opt for early cooldown instead, start with Mage's Blessing and follow the same path. Mage's Blessing, Shoes of Focus, Divine Ruin, Soul Reaver, Charon's Coin, Obsidian Shard. No matter what your starting item, This is a fairly standard mage build that will provide you with some decent anti-healing if you need it, more effective damage against high health targets, some movement speed, a little sustain, and a nice bit of magical penetration to top it all off. If you don't need much anti-healing, you might consider swapping out for Spear of Desolation for penetration and situational cooldown reduction, or a Chronos Pendant for MP5 and lots of CDR. Lane power build. When taking Baba Yaga into solo lane, you'll need a few more protections than a standard mage build can provide. So Nika recommends trying out the following items: Warrior's Blessing, Shoes of Focus, Breastplate of Valor, Void Stone, Ethereal Staff, Mantle of Discord, Soul Reaver. This build can provide you with a nice mix of protections, health, cooldown reduction, magical power, and crowd control reduction. Nika warns that players shouldn't get baited into building stacking items just because of Baba's passive. While it might be tempting to build into something like Warlock's Staff, since it will easily stack, Nika says you should instead build into something with more damage or utility, like Ethereal Staff or Gem of Isolation. Also worth noting here is that if you build into a stacking item, you're not going to get the heal, and in solo lane it's much more beneficial to get the extra sustain through being able to use the stacks of the house for healing. When to pick Baba Yaga. Now that you know how to play and build Baba Yaga, only one question remains. When should you pick her for your team comp? She's a bit less flexible than other mages, so you'll need to pay extra attention to your team's draft to make sure you can leverage her effectively. If your team has a lot of hard CC and a solid frontline presence, think Hercules, Sobek, etc., that can keep enemies out of your backline, Baba Yaga will fit in nicely. Similarly, if the enemy team doesn't have a ton of CC in their comp, you can probably make Baba work just fine. When your lane opponent has little to no CC, like Zeus or Sol, you'll have a good opportunity to poke them out and then escape with your blast off ability before they can retaliate. But if you don't have a lot of hard CC on your side, Sheento warns that you may not want to choose Baba, as the lack of hard CC in her kit can make it really difficult for her to be effective if there's no other CC available to set her up. When you notice that the enemy team is drafting a lot of hard CC guards or burst damage guards who will potentially one-shot Baba Yaga, you're probably better off picking someone else. While Baba can escape from some situations, she is easily locked down once she's used her blast off ability, be that via more CC or just lots of follow-up damage. If you're taking Baba into the solo lane, be aware that she's going to struggle really hard against some of the current CC heavy pressure picks like Yom, Sobek, Hammer and Arthur, so it's best to avoid picking her into those guards when possible. But Nika says she'll probably be fine against guards like Amaterasu and Vaman, since they struggle to punish guards directly and only do well at farming quickly. She'll also probably work well against other mage solos such as Baron or healers like Afro. Now that you've gotten some pro tips from Paul, Sheento and Nika, you should have everything you need to build and play Baba Yaga like the best of them. But if you're still looking for a few more tips on how to master the Witch of the Woods, be sure to watch Nika or Sheento on Twitch to get some extra insight. And be sure to catch them in the SMITE Pro League happening every Friday, Saturday and Sunday at 3 PM Eastern Time. And that is it for the post. I think this was very interesting, just a few perspectives on different parts of Baba Yaga. It wasn't super in-depth yet because obviously she hasn't been out for that long, but I really like the approach they did there. And yeah, I figured I'd read it out to you guys. Let me know how you like this format, if you want to see me do something like this in the future, if there are any posts like this again. And other than that, if you enjoyed this, feel free to hit the sub button and maybe the bell if you haven't yet, so you'll be updated for future SMITE videos and other games. And with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you for the next one soon. DukeSloth, out.